Good morning.
大家早安，
Good to be here this morning.
很高兴今天在你们中间。
And we are going to continue considering the book of Acts.
我继续在看《使徒行传》，
And we are talking about the mission of the church going from Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria to the ends of the earth.
我们就看福音是从耶路撒冷、犹太全地、撒玛利亚，然后到地极。
And so we started with Jerusalem and the birth of the church last night with Peter.
昨天晚上我们就讲彼得的故事，就是教会的开始。
Tonight we'll look at Stephen and we'll look at his stoning, which really represents the persecution. For 2,000 years, the persecution of God's servants.
今天晚上我们会提到史提凡，就是表示我们教会一直受逼迫，2000多年都是受逼迫。
And we will then tomorrow morning finish. Oh, well, that will represent the church then with persecution moving into Samaria.
就是说，是教会受到逼迫的时候就延伸到撒玛利亚去。
And then tomorrow morning we'll look at Paul and his conversion.
然后明天的话，我们就看到保罗跟他的改变。
Remember who Paul is?
我们记得保罗是谁吗？
The enemy of the church.
其实他是教会的敌人。
If Paul can be converted, the church is unstoppable.
就是说，连保罗都能改变的话，教会就是有这个希望。
And Paul is chosen not just to be converted, but to be the apostle to the Gentiles.
其实保罗并不只是改变，然后他被特别选要变成是外邦人的使徒。
So that's our 3 main sessions. But today in the workshop, we're doing something a little different.
这个就是我们3堂最主要的。但是今天我们的专题是有点不一样。
And what I want to focus on in this session is Bread of Life Church.
这个今天我讲在早上的时候关注点是关于我们自己教会灵粮堂。
Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, ends of the earth, including Torrance, Bread of Life Church, Torrance.
从耶路撒冷、犹大全地、撒玛利亚到地极，也包括我们在这里 Torrance。
Do we have this PowerPoint?
我们有没有这个投影片的？
What I want us to think is to think strategically about our church.
我们想大家考虑的就是我们教会的战略是怎么样的。
What assets does our church have in Torrance that God can use?
就是我们教会有什么资产，或是好的地方，我们就要神可以用我们的。
When I was little, when I was in 2nd, 3rd grade, I used to love to wrestle with my friends.
就是在我在2年级、3年级的时候，我喜欢跟人家摔跤。
And I remember in 3rd grade in the playground that I was emerging as one of the best wrestlers. I could wrestle most of the kids to the ground.
在3年级的时候，我在那里就是在玩的地方，我是变成是一个最好的，可以帮人家在那里摔跤的时候。
And I don't know how it happened, because it kind of emerged that there was another kid who was the other champion of our playground.
但是不知道怎么样，在那个玩的地方，忽然间另外一个孩子，他好像变成是这摔跤这方面他是最。
And I had a feeling this kid could beat me.
我有点感觉他可能会打。
And so I liked the idea that I didn't want to wrestle this guy, because I didn't want to lose. I always won, and I was worried about wrestling this guy.
所以我其实不想太跟他比赛，因为我觉得我想保持能够一直赢下去。
This is also unclear to me, but I remember one day we ended up face to face.
但是我不太记得，印象不太清楚。但是有一天我记得，我就跟他面对面。
And I remember this guy was better than me.
但是我记得他其实比我更强。
And as he was beating me, he made a mistake.
当他在赢我的时候，但是呢，他犯了一个很大的错误。
And somehow, I don't know what I did, but I was able to use his aggressiveness, to use his momentum, and to shift it and spin him over and pin him to And I remember after that, I was scared to death of this guy.
但是因为这个事情，我就怕得要死了。
The last thing I remember is I climbed up in the monkey bars just to stay away from messing with this guy.
就是因为完了以后，我就跳上去一个横杆那里，就是说。
That's what I love about wrestling, though, or judo, or some of those other sports, is momentum and strategy are so critical.
所以在很多的运动里面，有些时候你是那个怎么讲角力的时候是非常重要的。
You can use your disadvantage, flip it around, and turn it into your advantage.
就是你在那里，这明明是好像是你在那里不够的地方、缺点的地方，你可以变成是你有优点的地方。
And that's the image I have for missions.
这个就是我对于宣教的一个图画。
What are our assets?
就是说我们的资产在于哪里
And what are our weaknesses?
或者也看我们的弱点在哪里
And how can we flip those around so that we can use them for the kingdom of God?
我们怎么样把它可以颠倒过来，就是说为了宣教的缘故。
When I was in Taiwan, in Taiwan we planted a Chinese church, but the last 2 years I attended the Taipei International Church, the English language church in Taipei.
我在台湾的时候建立教会的时候本来是华人的华语的教会，但是最后这2年我们是在台北国际教会，这个是讲英语的。
And I got involved with the missions committee at TIC.
我是跟这个宣教里面的那个委员会里面，我就有份。
And I loved the missions that we were doing.
我是非常喜欢关于这个宣教的。
Because this is a church that took stock of what are our assets, who are we, and how can we mobilize ourselves for kingdom missions.
就是这个教会，就是说我们在宣教方面哪些是我们的资产，我们可以使到推动这个事工。
So we were about 50 or 60% white Westerners in Taipei.
这个是我们大概是50%到60%的人是在这里学习，我们是白人在那里在台北。
40 to 50% were Asians from around Asia. Many were Chinese, Taiwanese who returned from studies in the United States, all English speakers.
其他的40到50的是华人，很多都是从美国已经留学回去，在那里做事，我们都是讲英文的。
Most of us were professionals. We had a number of missionaries.
我们都是专业人士，有很多是宣教士。
And it was mostly fairly wealthy, white-collar type of people.
所以大部分都是白领阶级，然后经济状况都是不错的。
And so we were working intentionally how to do missions as an international church in Taipei.
所以我们在宣教的时候，我们怎么样做一个国际的一个教会？
I had the opportunity to make a trip to Indonesia where we met a missionary we were supporting there.
所以我有机会去到印尼那里，就是会支持一个宣教团。
We had 5 or 6 missionaries and ministries we were involved in, but I'm going to introduce today our ministry in India.
我当然刚才是讲印尼，但是呢，今天我想跟大家分享的是在印度的我们的宣教。
So let me introduce some of the people involved.
我想介绍一下，在这个印度这个宣教的里面的分子的那些人员。
And the goal is to stimulate our own thinking, not to do what TIC does, but stimulate what can we do in Torrance as a trilingual Chinese church in our context. What assets has God given us that we can be mobilized?
这里是讲那个台北的国际教会，其实最主要的目的是刺激我们在这里，我们教会是讲3个语言的，我们在这里 Torrance 能够做什么？
So we were part of a ministry that was 2 or 3 hours outside of southern India, outside of Hyderabad.
所以我们在那个 Hyderabad 就是在那个印度的地方，在那里大概是差了2、3个小时的地方。
And the person who was mobilizing us for that ministry was a man named Jerry.
在那里推动这个事情的，他的名字叫 Jerry。
Jerry is my hero in missions.
Jerry 是我在宣教方面的英雄。
How many people do you know? How many Chinese people do you know came to the United States, became part of a Chinese church, and has being a member of the Chinese church, usually coming for Chinese food, maybe fellowship, but they learn about Jesus, they learn the gospel, and they become on fire for the gospel.
究竟在华人教会里面，你信了主以后，结果你就是因为信了主以后，你就好像是有这个热忱、这个热火。
Jerry was the opposite case. He was in the United States a very lukewarm Christian.
其实 Jerry 是刚好相反，其实他是不冷不热的一个基督徒在。
But he went to Taiwan. He wanted to find a context with other Americans, so he went to TIC.
所以他要去的时候，他就是想不同的一个环境，他去到这个台北国际教会，就是经验一下。
He heard the gospel and Jesus Christ just got hold of his life and turned him around completely.
他听了是主的福音的，他把他整个人生、整个观念全部改过来。
He said, when I was in the United States, the church would ask me to take a leadership position, and I always said no because I felt like it got in the way of my work.
就是在美国的时候，他说有教会叫他做这个教会的领袖的时候，他觉得好像跟他的工作好像有点问题。
But once he was in love with Jesus, he always felt like when work asked him to do something, it got in the way of his church ministry.
就是好像有工作的话，就是跟他的那个宣教方面就是有冲突。
Jerry worked for Stanley Tools.
他是帮一个公司叫 Stanley Tool,
and he became involved in our missions committee.
他在我们这个宣教。
We were meeting at Taipei American School in Tianmu.
在天母的地方，我们在那个台北的国际学校里面。
And our missions committee, I remember this, our missions committee decided we wanted to have a missionary bulletin board that we would put up every week.
我们就是说，我们决定在那里有一个白板的地方，我们可以把所有的东西写在上面。
But the problem was because we were renting the building, we couldn't leave the missionary board up all the time. We had to take it down every week and put it into the closet.
因为我们去的地方是租的，所以我们不能把这个白板放在那里，所以我们每一次又要拿上去，又要拿下来。
So Jerry volunteered to be in charge of our bulletin board.
So Jerry 他就说，这个白板的话，我来负责。
I remember he one day told us, he said, there's a problem with our bulletin board. Every week I put new screws into the wall, and for some reason the janitors take all our screws out of the wall, and I have to put in new ones each week.
他说，因为我每一次把它放上去的时候，要把那个螺丝扫上去，但是呢，那个清洁工就是把它螺丝弄下来，就是每一次我要放在不同的地方。
But he says, don't worry, those janitors don't know how many screws I have. Stanley Tool, infinite screws.
他说我有很多螺丝，所以我都可以一直放上去。
And Jerry was the one who met a man named Das.
他就是 Jerry， 就是见到一个人叫做 Das。
Das had an amazing story.
Das 他有一个非常奇妙的故事。
We know in India that there are 5 castes.
我们知道，在印度的话，他们有5个阶层。
And below the 5 castes are the lowest people, the untouchables.
在这个5个最阶层在下面，最下面一个是说你不能去碰他们的。
And Das was abandoned by his parents as a baby, and he was adopted by a Canadian missionary couple.
就是他是被父母遗弃的，是有一个加拿大的一个宣教士把他收养。
And he had the opportunity as a young boy to move to Canada, where he received a top-notch, international standard education.
就是因为他去了加拿大，他受到是非常好的一个教育。
He met his wife, also an Indian woman, Doris.
他也这里碰到他这个太太，也是一个印度妇女，叫做 Doris。
And in Canada, of course, they could have done anything they wanted.
在加拿大的话，他们可以做任何他们想做的事情。
But he remembered where he came from. He remembered the untouchables in India.
但是他记得这些贱民，他仍然想到他们。
And so he and Doris returned to his home area to start a Christian ministry.
所以他跟他太太回去印度，在那里开始 一个基督教的一个机构。
And they started a ministry that was called Veda Ministries.
他们就开始一个事工叫做 Veda。
And Jerry became friends with Das and learned about this ministry.
就是 Jerry 跟 Das 他们变成好朋友，他也知道关于这个。
And Jerry would go to visit Veda Ministries every year, once or twice a year.
所以他有机会的话 ，Jerry 每一年或者是1年或者是2次。
He would pay 2 or 3 times to have Das come to Taiwan to meet the church and to visit other churches.
另外，他反过来就是让 Das 来到台湾的时候，跟他们其他的人有交接。
Some of the ministries Veda did was orphanage, of course, orphanage for Das.
所以其中一个他们所做的就是孤儿院。
They also had a medical clinic that they were involved in.
然后他们有那个诊所。
They also ran schools.
然后他们就有那个学校办学校。
The priority of the school, of course, was the orphans that they took care of.
当然，这个学校里面第一个优先就是照顾这些孤儿们。
But they also had wealthy families want to go to this school because it was the only English language school in the district.
当时也是有一些比较富有的人也愿意去，因为这个是讲英语的。
So a tremendous opportunity for outreach and for ministry.
是非常好的，让人家能够接触到福音的地方。
And Jerry was relentless in mobilizing the congregation in Taipei to provide things that were needed by Veda Ministries.
所以 Jerry 是特别鼓励他在台北的教会，就是特别去支持这个事工。
And in Taipei, there are all kinds of entrepreneurs.
在台北的话，有很多创业的人。
There was a man who ran a computer import company, something like that.
有一个人就是他是在那里关于电脑他是外销。
They supplied computers for Veda Ministries.
他们就是把电脑捐给这个。
Another American woman, she ran a company that dealt in fabrics in Taiwan and the United States.
然后有一个女士，她是做在衣服方面的，她在那里是。
They provided blankets and clothing and sewing machines for the sewing ladies to teach ladies how to do their own business in India.
因为她是做衣服方面的，她就给他们车衣机送到印度那边去。
And TIC, for instance, the medical clinic that they built, TIC was the primary contributor to build that.
因为刚才讲的，他们那边有诊所，医疗诊所，当然是这个台北国际是他们是热力支持这个的。
I loved the ideas Jerry had, creative ideas.
我非常喜欢 Jerry， 他是有很多有创意性的想法。
For instance, in Taipei, how could our 10, 12, 14-year-old children be involved in missions themselves?
在台北的话，在10岁、12岁的人，他们怎么可以跟在宣教方面有份呢？
How about being pen pals with the students learning English at Veda Ministries in India? They set up pen pals.
他们就是跟印度的就变成是笔友，就是可以跟他们联络。
Jerry was there one time and he noticed the small children not eating their lunch.
他在那里注意这些小孩子们，他们在午餐的时候他们不吃。
Jerry asked us, "What's wrong? How come the children, the small ones, aren't eating their lunch?"
他说：“这些孩子们怎么不吃午餐呢？”
He said, "Well, we have this problem is when the little ones take their lunch boxes out into the play yard, the pigs come and steal their lunches."
因为他们在吃午餐的时候，结果那些猪来到这里，把他们午餐偷了。
So Jerry went back to Taipei International Church, raised money, and we built a wall around the playground to keep the pigs out so the little ones could eat their food.
所以他就在台北的时候，他就筹了款，就是建立一些篱笆在那里围住那里，所以那些猪就不能来偷吃。
I'm going to show you a video, and we're going to see each of these little pieces that TIC was able to be part of, to contribute.
我要给大家看一个影像，就是关于这个事工。
And also they were involved in training leaders, church leaders in the area.
然后有一个事工，他就是在那里训练那些领袖们。
Jerry was always making contacts. He was gifted at networking. That's what he did.
他就是 Jerry 是非常有能力，他就是跟很多不同的人联
So he
络。
met a medical team from Hong Kong.
然后他从香港就是认得一个就是在医疗方面的一个团队。
And he asked DOS, what if I brought a dental team, a dentist team, medical team into your village?
他就问他说：“哎，如果我从香港那里带领一个牙医团或者是一个医疗团，你觉得怎么样？”
He said, we've never had a dentist. We will have hundreds of people.
他说：“我们从来没有牙医的，就是有一个就很高兴。”
In our video, it will show the three-way partnership, TIC, the Hong Kong Medical Group, and Veda Ministries as these dentists went into the village.
待会我们看的时候就看到这三方面，一个是台北的国际教会，跟这个Veda跟这个香港的团队。
Some of the people involved in the that you'll meet inside the video are Jerry. Be sure to notice Jerry. He's my hero of missions.
待会你们看的时候，你会看到 Jerry， 他是我的英雄。
Then there's also Pastor Doug.
另外还有一个是Doug牧师。
The pastors were involved. The senior pastor had gone a year earlier. Pastor Doug was the associate pastor.
这个他不是主任牧师，是一个助理的牧师在那里帮忙。
And Pastor Doug told us that God used his gift.
就是他告诉我们，神用他的恩赐。
He is a big, heavy guy. Looks like a football player with a really rugged face.
他是一个很长得非常高大的人，好像打美式足球的人。
His personality is very sweet and quiet, but his appearance is a football player.
看起来是好像很凶悍的一个足球员，其实他是非常温柔。
And he said when hundreds of people got in line for the medical services, they gave him the job of keeping order on the line, going up and down, looking mean and tough, and they all stayed quiet and waited in line.
因为去到那里，很多人想得到医疗，但是他站在那里，就是说你们要有秩序的这样子，因为他长得高大。
Then there was another member of the team you'll meet. His name is Adam.
另外有一个叫做 Adam， 就是亚当。
And he was a missionary, and he worked for ORTV. Some of you know ORTV.
他也是一个宣教士，在台湾做这个电视上面叫做 ORTV。
And so you'll notice this video is a little bit better quality than most missionary videos. He has some training on how to do this.
因为他是做电视剧的，所以我们等一会儿看的那个品质是比普通的我们的品质要水准高一点。
It's not the level of ORTV, but it's better than the normal local church.
当然比那个 ORTV 的还差一点，但是呢，比普通一般的品质要好一点。
And then let me introduce one more person who will be in the video.
另外最后我想跟大家介绍的是一个叫做 Paula。
Paula is my second hero in mission.
这个是在我第二个英雄在里面。
She went to Taiwan with her husband, who was transferred there to manage a company.
他是跟他先生在台北要管理一个公司，所以他跟他一起去。
Dedicated her life then in Taiwan to do missions.
但是呢，他太太这个 Paula 就是他把他委身，为了在台湾就是要委身。
So she's here in India, but she also went to Indonesia. She visited all our ministries, and she was the backbone of this missions committee.
他是我们这个所有的支柱，他不管是去印尼或者是在那里去印度。
Unbelievable what a lay person can accomplish for the Lord.
真的是很惊讶，一个所谓平信徒，他能够为神做的事情。
I want us to watch this video. It's about 7 minutes.
我想大家等会儿看的时候，大概是大概7分钟而已。
And you'll meet all of these people who I've introduced.
你就会看到我刚才已经跟大家介绍的这几
And
位。
when it's done, I want to read a letter that was written by Paula.
完了以后，我会这里读 Paula 一个信。
We played this video at TIC when they did their missions report, and afterwards she read this letter.
就是在我们在那个教会里面，就也是放这个影像，然后呢，我们就念这个。
And I asked permission to get her letter and to read the letter to my missions classes, and she kindly and generously gave it to me.
我是得到他的应许，跟大家分享关于他写的信。
So let's watch the video and then hear this letter from Paul.
请我们现在打开那个 video， 然后待会我再念这个信。
Hi, this is Adam Litzkowski. I brought along a video camera and had the privilege of recording these images to show you more of the ministries, the mission we here at TIC support in India. First, meet our volunteers.
Hi, I'm Jerry Cooper, and I'm from TIC. Hi, I'm Dwayne, somebody else from somewhere else. Hi, I'm Chris Lawrence, and I'm from TIC. Hi, I'm Ben Street, I'm from TIC.
Hi, I'm Paul Perkins from Taipei International Church. Hi, I'm Tina Chen, and I'm from TIC.
Hello, I'm Dr. Dick Fang from the Taipei TIC.
Hi, I'm Dr. William Choi from Taipei.
Hello, I'm Dr. D from Malaysia.
Hello, I'm Chen Su. I'm from Taiwan. Hello, I'm Claire Lo, and I'm from Taiwan.
Hi, my name is Priyanka Silva, and I'm from Sri Lanka.
Hi, I'm Penalai, and I'm from Hong Kong.
Hi, my name is Sarah Yo, and I'm from Hong Kong.
After arriving at the airport, we unloaded everything and got ready to check in. With the Lord's help, our large load got on plane without a hitch. Since we had a 10-hour layover in Kuala Lumpur, some of us did some sightseeing. We arrived in Hyderabad late that night and got the vans loaded up. We were welcomed and prayed for. Then we were on the road for our hotel, 3 hours and 160 kilometers away. I was surprised at how many people we saw sleeping on sidewalks as we left the city. After getting a few hours sleep, we hit the road again for 45 minutes to get to the school in Malipali. Das's son Nathan planned a long and involved program for the children to perform in welcoming us. I'd like to show you the area surrounding the Matilda School in Malipali. First off, walls have been put up in the last year to keep cobras and these guys out. Das says they used to come in and eat the kids' lunches. The little ones were helpless to do anything. Before we arrived, I expected to find the school and ministries on an isolated plot of land away from people. What I found is that it's only 500 meters from the center of Malipali and surrounded by small town hustle and bustle. Several small tent communities have been set up by squatters with no homes. These people are mostly construction or road workers that move around as the jobs move. The road outside the school and clinic is busy and loud. Most traffic is large trucks, buses, and taxis. There is plenty of foot traffic, both human and otherwise. The dental clinic started Monday morning by serving the students and teachers of Matilda School. Pastor Doug Street kept the children occupied as they waited. Dr. Choi examined teeth to determine what, if anything, needed to be done. By Wednesday, we had started treating people from the surrounding towns and countryside. For many of these people, this was their first visit to a dentist in their life. In 5 days, our 6 dentists saw over 1,000 patients, treated 660 patients, and performed over 1,000 procedures. On the last day alone, I was on the extraction table, and our doctors pulled 83 teeth. School starts every morning with an all-school assembly. Kids sing and pray and listen to important announcements before heading off to class. Except for one class in Telugu language, the entire day is taught in English from the lowest grade up. There are currently over 700 students being taught Christian principles in the Matilda schools. Using machines that seem like antiques to most of us, these young ladies are being taught a trade that will allow them to get ahead. A special treat for all of us was the evening visit to a tribal village. We were greeted with special dances and music. Dr. Farm even received a baby boy to hold on to. Via Ministries supports a school in the village. Pastor Doug Street led a pastor's conference one evening at the Bindu home. As is common in this area, the power went out and the meeting was held in the dark. The group belted out a few songs in Telugu with only a tambourine for accompaniment. Jerry, Pastor Doug, and I then got caught in a typhoon-like storm on the way back to the hospital. It was bone dry there when we arrived. The Bindu home cares for over 65 homeless children. Not all are without parents. Since TIC's last visit, the floors have been finished and a second floor has been added. Each child has their own case to hold personal belongings. Children sleep on mats on the floor and are cooled with overhead ceiling fans. The new school is located outside the town of Devarakonda, just 7 kilometers from the Malipali campus. Work has stopped for lack of funds to continue. Das and Doris are praying and believing for it to be ready and open in July for new classes. I was really surprised at how small the Stonecutter Community Church was. Just up the hill from the current location, land has been donated for construction of a new and larger building.
We're giving something to them for free. We're just showing them a Christian way of dealing with somebody else's problem.
Helping people in India to know more about what it means to be a Christian is helping one person at a time, one at a time. And if that's all we do on a trip like this, we've done our job.
We feel that personal touch is more important than any organization or church sending us money. We appreciate the money, but people coming, taking time, taking lots of pain to come, leaving their jobs, and being with us for a day or 2, 3, 4 days. And that is the greatest gift, a contribution that we could expect from anybody.
I would encourage people to come and see for themselves and to fill up the spirit.
Let me read this letter from Paula.
我会念 Paula 的信。
Let me read it in English. I have to add a couple explanations. Maybe the explanations you can translate, but otherwise I'll just read it.
我会念，然后呢，有些关于这个信我一些解释，等一会儿翻译的时候只翻译到关于解释那一部分。
I have been involved in the Veda ministries over the past 4 years, but this was my first time to visit and see with my own eyes what our partnership with Veda ministries is all about. I want to share with you what I saw during my week in India. One part of the Veda ministries is the Bindu home, which some of you sponsor 1 or more children. Most of these children have parents who are too sick or poor to care for them. With our support, Das is able to provide shelter, food, clothes, schooling, and medical care for these children. I was able to see this in action as I watched the kids line up for lunch. I went to the market and bought oranges for their snack. I watched them in school and read books to them that were donated by our church. I saw the home where they sleep, and I realized that donations from our church helped to build that home. I helped the sewing ladies make sheets for their mats from the fabric donated by Lee Hanson's. The remaining fabric will be made into clothing for the children. I met Praveen. Praveen was a boy who was born with a cleft palate. A very simple problem. A cleft palate.
就是它的这个凸唇，就是那个这里裂开来的。
In our church at TIC was one of the most famous surgeons in the world. Jerry arranged for this surgeon to travel to India to do the simple surgery on Praveen. She writes, I met Praveen, who 4 years ago had a severe cleft palate, and now, thanks to Jerry, looks and talks normal. I got to see the cow my family donated, which will supply milk for the Bindu children and money for their college fund. I got to see the joy on the children's faces as our team passed out stuffed animals donated by our church. I saw the excitement on their faces when they received their very own towel. I saw the wall around the school that Chris Lawrence donated to keep the pigs out. I saw the medical clinic that was built by the generous donations from TIC members and others. I watched the dentists in action as they offered their time and talents, and TIC members as we assisted. I got to see the trees planted 4 years ago by Jerry, David Perkins, and Pastor Mike. What was planted 4 years ago as simple sticks are now tall trees, providing shade and shelter for the playground. These trees are a symbol of the growth of our partnership with Veda Ministries. What we have planted at Veda Ministries over the past 4 years has grown into a school, a clinic, and a home, but most of all, we have planted into the lives of these children a life experience of love, shelter, food, health, and education. We have planted into their lives a hope and a chance for a future that will take them out of poverty. As I observed the impact our church has had on these people over the past 4 years, I caught a glimpse of the future. I caught the vision of TIC and Veda Ministries partnering together to impact the community, a community that is made up mainly of Muslims and Hindus. They have the only schools in the community that offer English education, so many families want their children to go to these schools. Here is a wide open opportunity to touch the lives of many families through the education of their children. There are a lot of things that need to be done. They need qualified English teachers to commit to teaching for at least 1 year. They need more Christian teachers that will teach and model Christ. They need internet access to connect them to the outside world. They need a team of dentists once or twice a year. The needs go on and on. But the revelation I received was that our church in Taipei, Taiwan, in partnership with Veda, could impact a whole community in India with the gospel of Jesus Christ. She read that letter.
她在读的那个信的时候
In the audience at church that day,
在那天在教会的那当天的时候
was a woman who had been a teacher at Taipei American School for 30 years.
有一位女士，她在台北的国际学校里面已经做老师做了30多年。
The next week, she had retired, and the next week, she was returning back to the United States for retirement.
因为在下礼拜她就要回到美国，因为她已经退休了。
She heard this letter and heard that there was a need for English teachers.
她听到说，有需要教英文的老师。
She canceled her plane ticket to the United States, purchased a new one to India, and in fact taught at the Veda School for 1 year.
她就取消她那个回美国的那个机票，然后把机票，然后她飞去印度那里，就是成为他们的英语老师。
What can our church do?
我们教会能做什么呢？
What can we do to impact a community?
我们能做什么去影响我们的社区呢？
I mentioned last night that often we like to dream about reaching out to UUPGs.
我在那里说，昨天晚上你讲到，我们有时候我在梦想上怎么样去接触这些未得之民
，people who have never heard the gospel.
因为有些人他们从来没有听过福音的。
I mentioned meeting this guy who had visited the temple. His name was Jerome.
那个 Jerome 我就提过，他就是跟这些佛教的那个佛堂那里接触。
You know how I met Jerome?
你知道我怎么认识这个人叫 Jerome 呢？
I was at a missionary conference and Jerome came up and introduced himself.
我在一个这个关于宣教的一个大会里面，他就跑上来，我们就见面。
He was carrying a big pad of paper with lots of notes in it.
他拿了一个本子，就是上面写了很多的东西。
And he said, "You teach missions at Logos Seminary, is that correct?"
他说：“你是不是在正道神学院里面是讲关于宣教的呢？”
And I said, "Yes."
我说：“是的。”
And he said, "How many E people are in the Los Angeles area?"
他说：“我们在这里有多少未得之民呢？你知不知道？”
He said, "How many E people?" I had no idea what he was
他说：“你
talking
这里
about.
有多少 E people？ 就是彝族的人。”
And so I didn't know what he said. I told my translator already what he meant. But what he wanted to ask is, how many? Is this?
下一
Can we go to the next one? How many E?
就是我们有在这里洛杉矶有多少彝族？
Yeah, so he clarified that what he was asking me is how many E people group are in the Los Angeles area. I said, how would I know that?
他说彝族在这里有多少人？那我说我怎么知道呢？
And he said, well, what I do is I'm collecting information on minority peoples from China. So whenever I meet somebody, I ask them, how many?
说我就是把这些资料整理好，所以碰到人的话我就问。
How do we reach unengaged, UUPGs, unengaged, unreached people groups? Let's go to the next slide.
好，我们看下一站好不好？为了知名，这个是为了知名的定义。
Oh, okay, I can do it. I got it.
那这里。
So here is the Izu. He asked me that first, but then he asked me, what about other minorities?
他说异族，你知道了，这里已经提到了。他说
Chinese church in Torrance. How many E people are in Torrance? Do you know?
他说你知不知道在 Torrance 这个城市里面有多少彝族的那个在这里？
Why don't you know?
如果你不知道，为什么？
Why does Jerome know? Or at least why is he at least trying to know?
为什么 Jerome 这个人就知道呢？为什么他就是很努力的去知道呢？
He wants to inform the Chinese churches that there are unreached, unengaged people groups right here in LA. And if you want to get his numbers, we can arrange that.
他就是要华人教会知道这里有很多少数民族，好像彝族这样子。如果你不知你想的话，我可以给他他的电话。
He met a man from an ethnic minority group in China, and he asked this man, "How many people from your group?"
他就是碰到一个大陆一个少数民族的人，他就问他说：“你知不知道你自己本族的究竟有多少人在这里？”
And he said, "Well, there's me, my wife, we have 3 children, so I guess 5 of us."
他说有我太太，还有3个孩子，大概5个吧。
Several months later, he was in a restaurant, a Chinese restaurant.
再过几个月，他在一个餐馆里面。
He asked the owner, "Where are you from?"
他问这个餐馆的老板，他说：“你是从哪里来的？”
Turns out this owner was from the same group as this other person a couple months ago.
结果那个餐馆的老板居然是跟刚才讲的那个是同一个族来的。
He said, "How many people from your group, your ethnic group, are in the Los Angeles area?"
他就问这个老板说：“你知不知道你们这个族里面究竟在洛杉矶里面有多少人？”
He said, "Well, I don't know for sure, but at least everybody in the restaurant is from our group."
他说：“我不知道，但是来这个餐馆的大概是从我们这个族来的。”
35-40 people.
在餐馆里面有35到40个人左右。
Jerome doesn't speak Chinese. He can't learn. He's not going to learn Chinese. That's not his call.
这个Jerome就是他不会讲中文，这个并不是他的呼召。
But what about us?
但是我们是怎么样呢？
We want to do UUPGs, but can we think strategically? Can we start closer to home?
我们当然是想去接触这些未得之名，但是我们能不能够先从我们自己家里开始，这里附近？
There are so many opportunities for us to minister.
其实有很多机会，我们可以去侍奉的。
And I want to encourage us to think strategically. Yes, think overseas. Yes, think of reaching out to Chinese people around the world.
当然是应该是有战略性的去想到去远方，也是关于华人的需要。
But let us also go to new people groups, taking the gospel from Jerusalem, Samaria, to the ends of the earth.
就是也有很多是没有未得之名，我们应该是去想到去接触他们，是从耶路撒冷跳到撒玛利亚去。
I found this statistic, or I heard it from a missionary friend.
我是从那个一个宣教的一个同工里面关于这个统计的数字。
I teach missions, and so I ask sources, where did he get this information?
所以因为我是教宣教的，所以我想问这个朋友，就是说这个弟兄，究竟你的数据是从哪里来的？
And I really want to tell you these statistics without admitting that I can't prove them, but I just can't do it. I have to admit, I don't know where these statistics come from. So, truth is, I do know they're consistent with statistics I've seen, but they are stated here in a powerful and clear way.
我想这些统计数字虽然我不能去证明它，但是跟我所知道的数字是有那个一致性的。
87% of all missionaries go to reached peoples.
就是87%的宣教士都是去那些已经得到的已得之民。
For instance, I was a missionary and I went to Taiwan. I went to reached peoples. I was one of the vast majority of missionaries that went to people who were reached.
好像我去台湾，其实我就是属于这个87%里面去的那些人群里面，已经是在那里已经是得之民。
13% of the missionaries go to peoples where there has been at least one gospel presentation.
有13%的，他们去到那些人里面，最少他们有听过福音一次。
So 13% of the missionaries go to unreached people. They're not unengaged, they are engaged, but they're unreached. There's no Christian church among them. So 13% of missionaries go to these people who have heard the gospel, and we continue to preach the gospel to them.
就是去到那里，他们是那里他们没有去教会怎么样？但是呢，我们去到那里是他们就能够有机会听到福音。
But 1/3 of the world is unreached, unengaged.
但是世界上有1/3的，他们跟基督教根本没有接触，也没有是所谓是未得之民。
And if your math is good, you can see that less than 1% of the missionaries go to this 1/3.
所以你数学对的话，你就知道，低过1% 的宣教士去这些未得之民。
Why?
为什么是如此呢？
Because those are the most difficult places.
为什么？就是因为这些是最困难能够去到的。
Those are the places where they hate the West, they hate Americans, and they hate Christians.
就是这些地方，他们就是非常痛恨西方，痛恨这些宣教士，痛恨美国。
And they are by far the most dangerous places in the world to go.
他们是在这个世界上是最危险的，你要去到那里的话。
How can we possibly reach those places?
我们怎么有办法能够去到这些地方呢？
What assets do we have at Bread of Life Church Torrance that we can mobilize so that we can reach these people?
我们在Torrance灵粮堂有什么资源可以推动大家去到这些地方？
Can we open our eyes and see that these people, many of them, are immigrating to the Los Angeles area?
求神把我的眼睛打开，看到其实这些很多他们就移民来到洛杉矶。
We have tremendous opportunities given to us by God.
其实神给我们有很大的机会。
I do pray that your church will continue to send missionaries and will go to all parts of the earth.
我这人为这个你们祷告，希望你们继续不断的把宣教士差出去世界各地。
But the book of Acts teaches us that we have all been given the gift of the Holy Spirit.
这里使徒行传告诉我们，我们都有圣灵的恩赐。
That we receive the power of God inside of our lives.
所以我们的生命里面有神的大能在我们里面。
And the point, the reason for God to provide that power to us is so that we will be a witness to all people groups.
神给我们这些能力，就是要我们为他做见证，去达到这些未得之民。
And
所有的人
would encourage each and every one of us to pray, how can God use me to be a witness?
我为大家祷告，就是说神能够怎么用我去这样子参与这个事工。
Last night I mentioned it might be as simple as opening up your home, your dinner table, to a guest to come and enjoy table fellowship with you.
昨天晚上我跟他们分享，其实可以很简单的把你的家打开，邀请别人来到你的家里面，跟他们享用晚餐，比如说。
Maybe we can take an immigrant, we can take a refugee for their driver's exam, and then have them over for dinner.
比如说，我们有些刚好的移民，或者是他们是难民，他们需要去开车，就是去拿到执照，然后呢，请他来到我们家里共进餐。
Again, what I want us to think about is the image I started with of wrestling.
就是刚才我讲的，我是跟人家摔跤的时候的那个图画。
So let's not think about what we can't do, but what disadvantages we have. How can we transfer the momentum and turn that into our greatest strength?
就是让我们再一次想到，不要想到我们的弱点，怎么样把这个弱点变成是我们的就是我们的好处，就是可以把这个扭转过来。
For the kingdom of God.
为了神国度的缘故。
Let's pray.
请我们低头祷告。
Lord, we thank you that you have placed the Holy Spirit into our life, into our hearts.
父神，我感谢你，你给把圣灵放在我们的心里面，放在我们的生活里面。
Lord, we thank you that you choose to make us witnesses.
感谢主，你就选择我们为你做见证。
And Lord, we thank you that we know that the purpose is for all people groups to know the gospel.
主啊，我们知道你的目的就是要使到所有的万民万族都要知道你的福音。
And yes, there may sometimes be suffering, as there was for Peter, for Stephen, and for Paul. There may be suffering when we serve as a witness.
当我们做见证人的时候，可能我们受到一些痛苦，好像彼得，好像史提凡，好像保罗一样。
But Lord, we thank you that when we stand next to somebody at their baptism, we can experience a joy unimaginable.
但是我们看到，如果我们站在一个人当他受洗的时候，我们的快乐是真的是无比的。
Lord, thank you for this church. I pray that you would use this church to be salt and light.
神啊，我在为这个教会祷告，使到这个教会能够做光做盐。
We pray in Jesus' name.
奉主耶稣基督的名祷告。
Amen.